Today we're going to be continuing our lecture series on writing narratives, and this time we're going to be considering plot lines and the different types of plot lines you might encounter. So one of the things I want to start with is a quote from James Hall, and so he says that it's commonly said there are only two plots: a person leaves home and a stranger comes to town. So if you think about it, both of these are really the same story from two different points of view. In both cases, what causes the quote-unquote story to occur is that something has happened to throw out of balance the relative calm or homeostasis of a person or community. So one of the things that you can think about is that need for change, that need for imbalance that starts out what is called a story. So if everything is just as normal, it hasn't reached that level of really being a story quite yet most of the time. And so a couple of ways that you can think about engaging that is to think of it as whether you want to talk about, do we have some sort of a stranger coming to town? Do we have someone who is showing up and the society there needs to figure out what to do with that person? Or do you maybe want to write a story about a person who is leaving home and going on some sort of journey, meeting new types of people? These are some of the ways that you can get started with that coming or going as one of the ways you can get launching that plot line. I've also got a few others. These are from Janet Burroway, and these are some directions that you can take for plot inspiration. You don't have to, but they're just some good ones that can give you a sense of some of the options that are out there. So you can start by coming up with a dilemma or a catch-22. So if there's a solution that doesn't have if there's a situation that doesn't have that exactly, a solution, that can be one way to really get rolling on thinking about, okay, now that I've put a character in a situation with no solution, how is that character going to act? What's going to happen there? You can also consider incongruity, so something that doesn't make sense to you. So if there is perhaps an event in your life that you've been turning around again and again, you likely won't want to write that exactly how it is, but that could actually be something really interesting to explore from a perspective other than your own, and that can be done in narrative. The transplant is another way that we can think about a direction for plot inspiration. So you can take an emotion, you can take an experience that you have had, transfer it into a different situation that would produce similar emotions. So that's one of the ways that you can, there are a couple of ways that you can approach writing. One that's really common to talk about is write what you know. So if you know it, you'll be able to write it in a new and different way. When I was in college, I had a really fantastic writing teacher, and she had actually been writing about this woman who lived on a farm and all of this just really rural elements to it, and she had never lived on a farm herself, and it was a bit outside of her ken. And what she said was, you don't have to write what you know. You do have to do research so that you know enough to write about your subject. But what is best is if you actually write what you feel. So if you're trying to write emotions that you haven't experienced, oftentimes that will read very falsely. But a really great strategy for getting started with a plot is to take an emotion you've had and then to transfer it, to transplant it, to see what type of similar emotion you might find in a situation that's very different. The last one that I'm going to suggest right here is called the revenge. So if there's something that's been bothering you, if there's an injustice that you've noticed and you've felt, you can resolve this through fiction. So if you want to go back to either if it's a little event that's just happened to you or something that's much larger, being able to write is actually a great way to deal with and engage with this idea of wanting some sort of closure.